In 1982, archaeologists broke open a row of sealed stone chambers on an ancient Italian beach. No one expected much. The chambers were small, dark. They'd been buried under 80 feet of volcanic rock for nearly 2,000 years. Workers assumed they were storage vaults, old boathouses. Nothing more. They were wrong. Inside, packed wall to wall, were skeletons of them, men, women, children, elderly. Some sitting, some curled together. Some collapsed on top of each other, like they'd fallen mid-motion and simply stopped. More than 300 people, frozen in place, exactly where they died. Archaeologists stood in silence. They had just walked into the worst day in the history of a city that almost no one remembers. But that wasn't the real discovery, because out on the open sand, not in the chambers, not sheltering with the others, a single skeleton was lying face down on the beach. Alone, away from everyone. And this one was different. The site was Herculaneum, a Roman city on the Bay of Naples. Smaller than its famous neighbor, Pompeii, wealthier, more refined, home to about 5,000 people, who spent their days overlooking one of the most beautiful coastlines in the ancient world. On August 24, 79 AD, Mount Vesuvius erased it from existence. For centuries, historians focused on Pompeii. The larger city, the more dramatic ruins, the plaster casts of the dead. Herculaneum was excavated slowly, carefully. Its streets and villas were extraordinary. Its secrets ran deeper, and the deepest secret of all was on the beach. When archaeologists cataloged the remains, they numbered every skeleton and logged every position. Most of the 300 were crowded into the boathouses. Families together, adults shielding children, the very young found lowest to the ground. But Skeleton E26, that's the official designation, was out in the open. He wasn't sheltering. He wasn't crouched or curled. He was face down in the sand, left hand partially raised, fingers curled as if pressing into the ground, like he was still moving when it happened. Who was this man? The artifacts found with the body answered part of that question. A sword. Not a ceremonial piece, not a relic. A Pompeian-style gladius, military issue, state-of-the-art for the period, the kind carried by soldiers in active service. A dagger, a silver belt, a leather pouch. Inside the pouch, gold and silver coins, enough to equal roughly 2 years' salary for an ordinary person. Think about that. One man, alone on a beach full of the dead, carrying the equivalent of 2 years' wages and the weapons of an elite soldier. He was the only armed individual found among all 300, the only one. But the bones told a deeper story. Forensic analysis of the skeleton revealed a man in his late 30s, possibly early 40s. His vertebrae showed the early stages of arthritis. Old wear, the kind that builds up slowly over years of physical strain. This wasn't a young recruit. This was someone who had been doing this for a long time. His front teeth were missing, not knocked out by the eruption. The bone had healed around the gaps, which means they were gone years before, lost in life, in some forgotten incident. Burn marks on the back of the skull, charring along the shoulder and upper arm, and the left hand not flat on the ground, contracted, reaching. Piece by piece, a picture emerged, middle-aged, experienced, armed with cutting-edge equipment, carrying significant wealth. Found completely alone, away from any shelter, on an open beach during the worst volcanic disaster of the ancient world. Here's the thing. None of that makes immediate sense. What was a soldier doing in Herculaneum at all? Herculaneum was not a military city. It was a resort town, a playground for the Roman elite. Grand villas, private gardens, views across the bay, wealthy merchants, successful freedmen, senators on holiday. A soldier stationed here would have had one of the most comfortable postings in the empire. And the coins. 2 possibilities, and only 2. The first, they were his savings. When Vesuvius erupted, and chaos swept the city, he ran back into his quarters, grabbed everything he had, and made for the beach. People do this. They grab what matters before they run. The second possibility is harder. As the city emptied, as thousands fled and left their homes open and unguarded, someone with knowledge of where things were kept could have moved through those abandoned villas quickly, taken what was there, reached the beach with pockets full of someone else's money. We cannot know which is true, and that uncertainty is not a flaw in the story. It's the story. By the time the soldier reached the beach, the eruption had already been running for hours. It had started around midday on August 24th. The initial blast sent a column of ash and gas nearly 20 kilometers into the sky. The wind initially pushed the clouds south, toward Pompeii. Herculaneum, 4 miles from the summit, received something different: a slow, darkening sky, a rain of pumice, the smell of sulfur. People in Herculaneum had time to react, and most of them did. The city did not simply freeze, it evacuated. Houses were left open, valuables abandoned, roads filled with people moving toward the water, because the water was the only way out. What would you do in that moment? Where would you go? The beach was the obvious answer. This was a port city. There were boats, there was sea access. The bay was right there. Hundreds made it to the waterfront, but something had gone wrong. Only one boat was ever found at Herculaneum. One, upturned, damaged, unseaworthy. Whatever fleet had served this harbor, the fishing vessels, the pleasure craft, the cargo boats, they were gone. They had either sailed already or been destroyed by the initial eruption pressure. The 300 were stranded. Across the bay, at the Roman naval base of Misenum, a commander named Pliny the Elder had seen the eruption column and launched a rescue fleet. He was heading for the coast. He would not make it. Falling ash and rock would force the fleet to change course. Pliny himself would die on the beach at another town, waiting for conditions to improve. No one was coming. Night fell. The city behind them was empty. The sea ahead offered nothing. The boat was useless. Most of the 300 moved into the boathouse chambers, stone-arched openings that faced away from the volcano and toward the water. They offered walls, a ceiling, some small illusion of safety. The children were laid down to sleep. The elderly settled in corners. Adults gathered in small groups, voices low, and on the beach, the soldier, standing, alone. Here's where it stops making sense. He was the only person present with weapons, with authority, with military rank visible in his equipment. In a crisis like this, people look for exactly that kind of figure. Someone who projects control, who seems to know what to do. Evidence suggests that's precisely what happened. The distribution of the skeletons tells a story. The men, mostly outside or near the entrances of the chambers. The women, the elderly, the children, inside, protected. The youngest found closest to the ground. Older individuals positioned above them, as if they had moved to cover the smaller bodies. Someone organized this. The chambers were not randomly packed. There was a pattern, a logic. People had been directed to move inside, to stay low, to keep the youngest protected, and the soldier stayed outside. Not because he couldn't fit, not because he didn't know what was coming. Maybe because someone had to stay out there. Someone had to watch the water. Someone had to remain visible in case rescue arrived and needed to be signaled. Someone had to be the last line between those chambers and whatever was moving down the mountain. Or maybe he simply stood there because that was who he was. We don't know. After midnight, the eruption changed. The massive column of ash and gas that had been rising into the sky for hours began to collapse under its own weight. When a Vesuvian eruption column collapses, it doesn't simply fall. It transforms. The material condenses into a fast-moving cloud of superheated gas, ash, and rock fragments that rolls down the slopes of the volcano at devastating speed. Geologists call it a pyroclastic density current. It moves like a river. Except, the river is traveling at up to 100 kilometers per hour, and it is on fire. Most people still don't know what actually killed the 300. For decades, the assumption was suffocation, breathing in ash, losing consciousness slowly, dying over minutes. The truth is different. The first pyroclastic surge reached Herculaneum at roughly 1 in the morning. It traveled 4 miles from the summit in under 6 minutes. What hit the beach was not smoke. It was a wall of gas at 500 degrees Celsius. No one moved. No one had time. Forensic analysis of the skulls found microfractures consistent with rapid internal pressure. The brain fluid vaporizing instantaneously. The skull cracking outward from inside. In some of the chambers, archaeologists found a microscopic layer of red-colored ash coating the bones. When analyzed, it contained iron and traces of human hemoglobin. It was not ash. It was the remains of flesh, vaporized in an instant and settled as a fine red film over the dead. Death came in under 2 seconds. The sleeping children didn't wake up. The soldier was found exactly where he had been standing. No shelter, no walls around him. Just the open beach and the bones of a man who chose, or was required, to remain exactly where he was. His left hand was contracted, not reaching. That's what extreme heat does to muscle and bone. It pulls the tendons tight, draws the fingers in, creates the impression of movement where there was only physics. He was already gone before his body hit the sand. The burn marks on his skull and shoulder faced the direction of the volcano. He was turned toward it when the cloud arrived. He saw it, or heard it, in those last seconds. He didn't turn away. The coins are still in an Italian museum. The sword is still there. The dagger, the silver belt, and the bones of specimen E26 have been studied, photographed, analyzed, every detail documented. But the one question that matters cannot be answered by bones. Why did he stay? The beach at Herculaneum still exists, though it looks nothing like it did. The ancient shoreline is buried under centuries of sediment. The boathouse chambers still stand, preserved by the same material that killed everyone inside them. If you go there now, you can walk along the excavated beach. You can stand roughly where he stood. You can look out over the Bay of Naples, toward the island of Capri in the distance, toward the water that offered no rescue. The volcano is still there too. Most people who visit Herculaneum spend their time in the grand villas, the decorated floors, the carbonized furniture, the extraordinary preservation that makes this site unlike anything else on Earth. Few of them walk down to the beach. Fewer still stand in the place where a middle-aged soldier with bad teeth and a bag full of coins made a decision we will never fully understand. The ash is still in the ground. The bones are still cataloged. The coins are still counted. And every answer leads back to the same question. He had a sword. He had money. He had every reason to push through the crowd and take whatever space was left on a departing boat. Maybe he did. Maybe those coins bought his place in someone's escape. Or maybe he stood on that beach in the darkness, watching the water, keeping 300 people calm, waiting for ships that never came. The evidence leans one way, but history leaves the door open.